heart stopped. The last thing I remember is the floor rushing up to meet me. No white light, no life flashing before my eyes, just a crushing weight on my chest, the frantic shouts of my colleagues fading into an electric hum, and then profound, terrifying silence. I thought it was the end.
What?
But in the hazy twilight that followed, a place somewhere between this world and the next, I learned a truth that would change everything. Sometimes endings aren't endings at all. Sometimes they're just brutal, beautiful beginnings. The first time my heart stopped was the day I met Eris Thorne. It was a decade ago, in a crowded bookstore cafe. She was tucked in a corner, a halo of lamplight in her hair. Her eyes glued to a page with an intensity that blocked out the rest of the world. When she looked up and our eyes met, the chaotic noise of the cafe just stopped. My breath caught, my pulse hammered, and my whole world, which had been a frantic sprint, just stood still. I didn't know it then, but she would become the source of my life's greatest joy, and later, its deepest sorrow. The second time my heart stopped, there was nothing poetic about it. It was just brute force and failing biology. But when I woke up, dragged back from the edge by a team of faceless heroes, my body a map of pain, I heard a voice I knew better than my own, one that had haunted my dreams for 5 long years. As my vision finally cleared, the harsh ICU lights sharpened the image of the woman standing over me. A mask covered her face, but there was no mistaking the eyes. The same eyes that once looked at me with adoration now held a look of clinical, devastating detachment. The doctor who saved my life was the woman who had shattered it. "Mr. Jensen? Liam? Can you hear me?" The voice was sterile, filtered through a mask, but it hit the fog in my head like a physical blow. Eris, it couldn't be. My sluggish, damaged brain was playing tricks on me, conjuring ghosts from a past I'd tried so hard to bury. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw, a tube snaking its way down, a brutal reminder that I couldn't even breathe on my own. I blinked, trying to clear the haze. She was still there. Tall, poised, her hair pulled back tightly, wrapped in the impersonal armor of a doctor's coat, but the eyes. Those were her eyes. That same deep, compassionate brown, now guarded by a wall of professionalism so high it seemed impossible to scale. Panic, cold and sharp, sliced through the morphine haze, is trapped. Prisoner in my own broken body, with my personal ghost as the warden. My fingers twitched, a feeble attempt to pull out the tube, to run, to escape this waking nightmare. Her hand, gloved and cool, gently but firmly covered mine. "Easy, Liam. You're in the ICU. You had a severe myocardial infarction, a heart attack. We performed an emergency angioplasty and placed a stent in your left anterior descending artery. They call it the Widowmaker. You're very lucky, lucky." The word echoed in the beeping space between us. I was alive, yes. But waking up to her, the architect of my heartbreak, felt like a uniquely cruel twist of fate. Every beat of my newly repaired heart was a painful thud, reminding me of the one she'd broken so thoroughly 5 years ago. I stared at her, searching for a flicker of the woman I loved in the medical professional before me. There was nothing. Just a measured calm that made my skin crawl. A few minutes later, another doctor came in, older, with a kind face. Aris stepped back, her posture shifting as she ceded the space. "Liam, this is Dr. Evans," she said, her voice again the crisp, detached instrument of a physician. "He's the head of cardiology and will be your primary attending given our prior acquaintance. This is a matter of professional protocol. It's to ensure you receive the most objective care." Prior acquaintance. She made it sound like we'd met at a dinner party once, not like we had shared a life, a home, a future. Dr. Evans smiled warmly. Oblivious to the history swirling in the room, started talking about my condition, the damage to my heart, the long road ahead. He mentioned something called an ejection fraction, a number that now defined my future. He said mine was at 30%, which was low. It was a stark numerical label for my own weakness. I barely heard him. My eyes were locked on Eris, who stood near the door, observing. She explained she was part of my care team, overseeing my case management and transition to rehab. She wasn't my doctor, but she wasn't gone either. She was a permanent fixture in my private hell, a constant, painful reminder of everything I had lost. The irony was suffocating. She had walked out on me because, as she'd screamed in our final terrible fight, I was killing myself with my ambition. Now, she was literally in charge of putting me back together. The next few weeks were a blur of sterile rooms, endless tests, and a suffocating feeling of helplessness. I graduated from the ICU to the cardiac step-down unit, a victory that felt hollow. Every day was a fight, learning to sit up, to stand. To take a few shuffling steps down the hall, tethered to a heart monitor whose every beep felt like an accusation. And through it all, Eris was a shadow. A name on a chart, a ghost in a white coat. Our first real conversation was in a consultation room that felt smaller than a prison cell. Dr. Evans was there, explaining my recovery journey. He was talking about cardiac rehabilitation, a monitored exercise program, 3 times a week for 3 months. It's crucial, Liam, Dr. Evans said. It's not just about strengthening your heart. It's about rebuilding your confidence, managing your anxiety, and making the lifestyle changes you need. Iris was in the room, standing by the window, her arms crossed. She hadn't said a word, but her presence sucked the air out of my lungs. Dr. Evans turned to her. Dr. Thorne, you oversee the rehab program, right? You can probably explain the intake process. She finally turned, her gaze meeting mine for a split second before darting to the wall behind me. The program is designed to gradually increase your cardiovascular tolerance in a safe, monitored environment, she began, her voice a perfect monotone. You'll start with a stress test to determine your baseline capacity. Then our physiologists will create a personalized regimen. We also have nutritional counseling and psychological support, which we strongly recommend. She talked about my broken body like it was a faulty machine. Every clinical term was a reminder of the chasm between us. The woman who once knew my every dream now only knew my ejection fraction. The unfairness of it all churned in my gut. As she spoke, my mind fled to the past. I was back in our old apartment maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I had a terrible flu, and I was being a complete baby about it. Iris, in the middle of her residency, came home after an insane shift and found me shivering on the couch. She just smiled, her eyes crinkling. She put a cool hand on my forehead, took my temperature, and then fussed over me for an hour. She made me soup, tucked a blanket around me, and sat on the floor, stroking my hair until I fell asleep. Her touch was so gentle, so sure, so full of love. Liam. Dr. Evans's voice snapped me back. Are you with us? I blinked, the memory dissolving. I looked at Iris, standing there in her severe professional posture, and a wave of bitterness washed over me. Yes, I croaked. Fine, whatever it takes. My first day of cardiac rehab was a masterclass in humiliation. The gym was filled with people twice my age who were lapping me. I was hooked up to a telemetry pack, wires stuck to my chest, broadcasting my heart's pathetic rhythm for all to see. A cheerful physiologist named Brenda walked me to a treadmill. Okay, Liam, we're just going to start with a very gentle walk. Tell me if you feel any chest pain or dizziness. I felt all of it just standing there. My legs felt like lead, started walking at a crawl. Every labored breath felt like a failure. And then I saw her. Iris was on the other side of the room, talking to another staff member, but her eyes kept flicking to the monitors to my stats. She was watching me fail. A surge of defiant, stupid pride shot through me. I pushed the speed up a notch, a tiny increment, but for my battered heart, it was a marathon. Brenda started to object, but I ignored her. I would not be weak in front of her. The beeping from my monitor grew faster. A sharp twinge jabbed my chest. That's enough. Brenda's voice was sharp. Slow it down, Liam. Now, my legs gave out and I stumbled, grabbing the handrails. The room swam. Brenda and another therapist were at my side, helping me to a chair, their voices a worried murmur. Across the room, I saw Iris take a half step forward, her professional mask cracking for just a second. I saw a flicker of pure fear in her eyes before she caught herself and turned away. That flicker, that tiny crack in her armor, was more devastating than her indifference. It proved the woman I loved was still in there, buried under layers of scar tissue. Later that week, I caught her in the hallway. Do you enjoy this? I asked, my voice harsher than I intended. She stopped and turned. Enjoy what, Mr. Jensen? This, I gestured at the hospital at myself, seeing me like this, weak, broken. Is this some kind of cosmic joke? This is just the beginning of my story. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Thanks for listening. Her jaw tightened. For a second, I thought I'd finally broken through, but then the mask snapped right back into place. "My only concern is your clinical outcome," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Your personal feelings aren't my concern. My job is to make sure you follow the treatment plan so you don't have another likely fatal cardiac event. Now, if you'll excuse me," she just walked away, leaving me alone with the ghost of our last fight. Her voice echoed in my head. "You're going to work yourself into an early grave, Liam." "Maybe I am," I'd yelled back. "But at least I'll have achieved something." "What do you want me to do, Eris?" "Just stop." "Yes," she'd sobbed. "For me. For us. I want you to stop." I hadn't stopped. And now, here I was. Stopped. The weeks crawled by. I fell into the rhythm of rehab, finding a strange kind of camaraderie with the other patients who had all danced with death. We'd compare our meds, complain about the low-sodium diets, and celebrate the smallest victories, like walking a full 15 minutes on the treadmill or lifting a tiny 2-pound weight. Aris remained a distant star, always just out of reach. I'd see her conferring with Dr. Evans down the hall. Sometimes I'd find a bottle of water waiting for me after a tough session, and I just knew it was her. I once saw her watching my monitor from the nurse's station, and a tiny, almost imperceptible smile crossed her face when I hit a new personal best. They were crumbs, and I was starving. Then came the setback. About 2 months in, I was feeling stronger, more confident, was pushing it on the treadmill, maybe a little too hard when it happened. A sudden, chaotic fluttering in my chest, like a trapped bird desperately beating its wings against my ribs. My vision went gray. An alarm started blaring from my heart monitor. This was it. It was happening again. I gasped for air, but my lungs just wouldn't work. Through the thick fog of terror, a voice cut through the noise, sharp and commanding. "Liam, Liam, look at me." It was Eris. She was right there, her hands on my shoulders, her face inches from mine. The professional mask was completely gone. This wasn't Dr. Thorne, the stoic physician. My Eris, my Eris. "It's an arrhythmia," she said, her eyes locked on mine. "You're having a panic attack and it's causing a PVC run. It feels scary, but you are not dying. Do you hear me? You're safe." She grabbed my hand, her grip so strong and sure. It was the first time we had touched, skin to skin, in 5 years. The feeling was so overwhelming it momentarily silenced the terror in my mind. "Breathe with me, Liam," she commanded, her voice softer now, but still firm. "In for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. Come on, I've got you." I followed her instructions, my frantic gasps slowly evening out, my gaze fixed on her face. The chaos in my chest began to subside. When my heart rhythm finally returned to normal, she didn't let go of my hand. She just stood there, her own breathing a little shaky. "The wall was gone," she had said. "I've got you." And in that moment, I knew that whatever had happened between us, whatever pain still existed, it was all built on a foundation that had never truly crumbled. After that, something shifted. Dr. Evans explained that PTSD and anxiety were incredibly common after a major cardiac event like mine. He set me up with a therapist to help me work through it. The air between me and Eris was different too. The rigid professionalism was still there in public, but it felt brittle, like it could crack at any moment. We'd catch each other's eye across the rehab floor, and instead of a blank wall, there was a question, a memory, a flicker of something more. A few days later, I was waiting for my therapy appointment when I heard footsteps. It was Riz. She was holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to me without a word. "Thank you," I whispered. She sat down in the chair next to mine, leaving a careful foot of space between us. We just sat there in silence for a while, watching the rain streak down the massive hospital window. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice quiet. "About the other day, I overstepped. My reaction was unprofessional." I let out a bitter little laugh. "Unprofessional? Eris, that was the most real you've been with me since I woke up in this nightmare?" She looked up at me, her eyes glistening. The sight of it just broke something open in me. "I have to know," I said, my voice cracking. "Why did you really leave? Every time I see you in that white coat, it feels like a punishment. I almost died." And all I could think about was that I would never understand why. The question hung in the heavy air between us. I could see the war raging in her eyes, the doctor fighting the woman. She took a shaky breath. "You think I don't know that?" she whispered. "You think I haven't been living with that same ghost? Seeing your name on a chart, knowing the man I once loved was fighting for his life because of a future I saw coming and couldn't stop?" Tears were streaming down her face now. "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you, Liam. God, I wish it was that simple. I left because I couldn't watch you kill yourself. It wasn't just the 60-hour work weeks. It was celebrating a huge deal by smoking half a pack of cigarettes. It was the constant stress. I saw where it was all leading. I saw this." She gestured vaguely at the hospital walls surrounding us. "It's this exact future. I begged you to change, to get your stress under control, to just live. But you were on a rocket ship, and you didn't want anyone slowing you down." Her voice dropped to a pained whisper. "That last fight, I gave you an ultimatum. The job or me. I honestly thought you would choose us. You didn't. You chose the rocket ship. And leaving you was the hardest thing I have ever done. I told myself it was a shock to your system, that you'd finally wake up and take care of yourself. You'd just double down. I watched from a distance as you got promotion after promotion, and every time my heart broke all over again. I left to save you, Liam, but all I did was break us both." The confession just detonated in the silence, vaporizing 5 years of my anger and my carefully constructed narrative. All this time she was the villain in my story. But the truth was so much more painful. She hadn't abandoned me. She had tried to launch a rescue mission, and I had refused to be saved. The weight of that realization was heavier than any physical ailment. I couldn't speak. The story I had told myself about being a victim completely crumbled, leaving only the stark reality of my own choices. I had been the architect of my own destruction. Hers. "Eris," I finally said, my voice thick with emotion. "I had no idea. I was so stupid, so arrogant. All you ever did was try to take care of me, and I threw it back in your face. I am so sorry." "I'm sorry, too," she wept, "for the way I did it. For not fighting harder." We sat there, the space between us no longer a chasm, but a shared ground of grief. For the first time in 5 years, there was truth. "Your recovery," she said, composing herself and wiping her eyes. "That has to be what matters now. You need to focus on healing. We can't. There can't be anything else between us." "Not yet." "I know," I said, nodding. "But after, when I'm better. This time?" She looked at me, and for the first time in forever, I saw the Eris I remembered. The warmth, the hope. She gave me a small, watery smile. "Yes, Liam, after. We can talk." That conversation changed everything. My recovery was no longer a punishment. It was a mission. I attacked my rehab with a new dedication. I wasn't just healing my heart. I felt like I was atoning for my past. Every minute on the treadmill was a step away from the man I had been. Dr. Evans was thrilled. In a follow-up appointment, he pointed to a number on the screen. "Look at this, Liam. Your ejection fraction is up to 50%. That's a remarkable improvement." I glanced over his shoulder and saw Eris in the hallway, looking in. She met my gaze and gave me a genuine, brilliant smile. It was like the sun coming out after a long, cold winter. My last day of rehab felt like a graduation. My new friends, Sal and Maria, hugged me goodbye. Brenda, the physiologist who had pushed me so hard, gave me a certificate of completion that felt as significant as any degree I'd ever earned. After saying my goodbyes, I walked through the familiar halls one last time, my heart beating strong and steady. I saw her standing near the entrance, waiting. She wasn't in her white coat. It's just jeans and a sweater. It's just Eris. "So," I said, a smile spreading across my lips. "What now, Doc?" She looked up, her eyes clear and full of a light I thought I'd never see again. "Now, Liam," she said, her voice soft with promise. "Now we go for a walk, and we talk. For real this time." As we walked out of the hospital doors into the bright, crisp afternoon, I took my first real breath of free air. It wasn't an ending, and it wasn't just a beginning. It was a second chance. I knew with a certainty that ran deeper than bone, I wasn't going to waste a single second of it. Thanks for watching.